A calzone. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 1. Yes, we are here. It is starting right now of Requiem for a Tuesday. I am your host, Adam Pecora. And, yeah, we'll kind of see what happens for this. I think the initial plan is, I'm just going to kind of ramble on for fucking ever, and then we'll see how it goes. I'd like to eventually get into like segments and stuff where, there's like, oh, I love this part. Um, but I don't really want to put like any barriers on this so I can kind of see where it goes naturally. So there's some kind of like an evolution or something almost. But yeah, so hopefully we'll get to that point. We're gonna talk, movies, TV, music, a little bit of sports. For those who don't care about that, I don't care. I love them. They're very important to me, so we're gonna do that. And then sprinkle in some of the wonderful details of my extravagant personal life. Everybody's gonna be excited about that. Hopefully, that's more of just a as it comes to me thing, and we're not over here doing like Maury. Uh, but we'll see. Could easily end up doing some therapy type deal. Just kidding. We'll see. I probably actually need to do that. But first, let's go with the title of the show. You may recognize it. It comes from a very brief but memorable. I think it was the cold open. If not, it definitely was in the initial scenes of a mid-season 4 episode of Parks and Rec. For my money, probably the best show of our generation. Oh, excuse me. I've been battling a cold. Of course, of course I got it right as I was ready to get this rolling. So I'm already a little bit delayed on my timeline. So I'm like, fuck it. Uh, we'll do a cold sick episode. Hopefully it's not too noticeable. But yeah, so that's why that is. But Parks and Rec, I mean, what can I say that hasn't already been said? The fact that it recovered from its rough start and excelled, I think, is amazing for a multitude of reasons. But the first being like the optimism that like Leslie has in general is almost embodied in like the show being willed towards greatness. Because I mean, season 1 kind of a dud. It kind of went on almost the exact same path as The Office did, at least for the beginning. Like the shortened initial season isn't that great and not even really what anybody wants. So for whatever reason, they both got like a 6 episode first season, and then both times they're like, "Yeah, we kind of didn't do this well." So we're gonna kind of redo it all and just like wipe the slate clean. Uh, I'm not as well versed in The Office, so if that's not as accurate, I don't really care. But I feel like the characters definitely changed quite a bit from that little season 1 to season 2. Not nearly as dramatically in Parks and Rec, where obviously, I mean, Leslie started off as just like a complete like idiot, and in the same way as Michael Scott, to where like, how did she get this job? But we don't want to see that again. So they're like, okay, well, she can be like a dork, but let's like make her competent. Otherwise, why are we even doing this? And I think that that went a long way. Obviously, season 2 to season 1 is like monumentally better. And then season 3, I mean, you add not just Adam Scott, who is my A-lister out of the two, but also Rob Lowe, which, I mean, wasn't a big Rob Lowe guy. Never understood where that came from. Um, I saw St. Elmo's Fire, and I was like, wow, this is dark. I might have saw it a little too young. I was like 9 or 10 or something, but I was like, Jesus, this is a dark movie. Why do people like this? And then West Wing, I was too young while it was on, and it's probably too late now. But I mean, Aaron Sorkin, I do not deny that that show is incredible and that Rob Lowe is incredible in it. I fully back all of that. Plus, he was in that show Grandfathered. Like, that was after Parks and Rec, but like it might have been like while I was in the middle of streaming it. Like, I started season 1 while Grandfathered was coming on. Is that him? Whatever. He did that one. He did like that show on Fox that just didn't seem good with Josh Peck. Yeah, I can't even believe that I'm saying that. That's insane. Josh Peck. Wow. He really didn't. He really like tried to go on the Keenan Thompson route and just like just find his way into something. And it's not working out as well for Josh Peck. Probably rightfully so. But I mean, as long as you're doing better than Drake, 'cause Jesus Christ, did I wonder if the rise of like Aubrey Graham Drake really hampered Drake Bell's career? Like, not even musically, just like it was Drake and Josh, so he was just Drake, like to everybody, and then all of a sudden, oh no, this is Drake, and he's like, oh fuck, what am I supposed to do now? 'Cause that would be my reaction if I was Drake Bell. Thankfully, I'm not, 'cause that seems terrible. But yeah, so I mean, the additions. I mean, Adam Scott. I got into Party Down after watching Parks and Rec, and it's almost sad that he left, because the way I understand is that he left the show for Parks and Rec, and it like effectively ended because everybody was blowing up anyway. Um, but if that's the case, then it's almost sad that he joined Parks and Rec. Just because I think Party Down was amazing and probably the only good original programming ever to come out of Stars. You could probably try to convince me otherwise, but I don't think I'm going to watch any Stars original series other than that one, and that's all cast, and it still took me like 2 years just to even like give it a shot. Glad I did. It's fucking amazing. Everybody should watch it. Arguably, I would say that Adam Scott and Lizzie Kaplan have way better on-screen chemistry. I know that's kind of a hot take, but had they had time to really develop a relationship, which I think was happening, obviously, like if there was going to be a season 3, I think they definitely would have had like a pretty legitimate like relationship. I think it would have still been rocky and fun, and that was like a cool element to it, but like their energy was just electric. Now obviously they're way different characters than like who Adam Scott and then Amy Poehler are playing on Parks and Rec, but like I don't know, the chemistry was there. uh that's why it's sad, but obviously he was the boost for Parks and Rec. I think anyway. I think Rob Lowe added a lot, especially initially, while Adam Scott was still kind of like the villain guy for a minute. Um, but yeah, I love Party Down. You should watch Party Down. I do think that Mark Brendanawicz was a pretty bad supporting character, and I think that that guy, I'm from what I read, he left to become like to like start his movie career, like everybody has to do in a sitcom, and it never seems to work. Like, oh, Topher Grace is Venom now. It's like, I can't believe his movie career worked out well enough for him to get such a high profile role so soon. But at the same time, like, why is he Venom? This clearly isn't going to boost your movie career any further, because this is not believable at all. You know, you're fucking Eric Foreman. You can't be Eddie Brock now. Like, oh, you were the scrawny high school kid and now you're Venom? And they didn't even like beef him up like when he was turned into Venom. I get Eddie Brock could be small, that's fine. I don't really care about that. I didn't read the comics. I don't know what the character looked like. I don't really know if any of the stuff was on par. I don't even care about any of that. All I'm saying is like strictly like, why was Venom smaller than Spider-Man? At least that's how I remember it. I just remember him not being like a towering double Spider-Man, which is how I remember Venom from the Spider-Man video game from N64. It was super rare. I don't know how my parents got it. You couldn't find it anywhere. The internet was barely a thing, so like maybe eBay existed, but like there's no way that it was cheap. And shouts out to them. It was an amazing game. It had the red cartridge, and it was amazing. It lived up to the hype. I was super excited for it, but it did not. I couldn't beat it. I remember. I think the last level, from what I know, it was the last level. It was like you versus Carnage, and he was just unstoppable. And beating Venom was really hard too. That game was awesome though. I wish that they would redo that. They are redoing SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, and it's like about fucking time somebody answers a generational like reboot thing, and it's not like old people stuff. I mean, for video games, sure that makes sense, but like that game is so underrated, and the fact that it's like a SpongeBob game is unbelievable. But that game is so good. I actually had rebought it a couple years ago when I bought like an original Xbox from like Salvation Army or something for like $15, and I'm like, I have to get Battle for Bikini Bottom because it is so good. So if you haven't played it, please play it. Back to Parks and Rec. So yeah, the addition of those characters was awesome. Mark Bandanowitz was not strong. Again, he came on stronger in the second season. Like everybody really stepped up for season 2. Um and I'm super stoked about that. It's awesome. But the show definitely like the addition of Rob Lowe and Adam Scott was like such a boost. You can't even I can't even quantify it. It's like if season 1 was like a 3 and then season 2 was like a 6, they just went straight to a 9 like out of nowhere. And I think that even the 3 to 6 is a pretty big gap. It was like a 4 to like a 5.5, and then they're just like 9. Here we are. We've arrived. You know, it's like the team all came together at once, like in a perfect scenario. You know, it was like when the Celtics first got together and they're just like, boom, championship. We immediately get these 3 guys that can just play together so seamlessly. I mean, I think Uncut Gems just has me thinking about how good the '08 Celtics were now. I know that was set in 2012, but like same core group. So that they may just be fresh on my mind, but I think that Parks and Rec kind of came together in the 3rd season. It was like, okay, we've already had Paul Pierce, but let's bring in Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett, and we'll just tear the shit apart. And then like everybody else came through as Rondo, and we just shocked the hell out of everybody, just throwing dimes across the fucking board like nonstop. I mean, I didn't know who Nick Offerman was, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Pratt. It's like all of these people all of a sudden are just fucking out there. I didn't even know who Rashida Jones was. I mean, I'd watch The Social Network. I think is one of the greatest movies of all time. Um, but I didn't recognize her or anything. Even when I started Parks and Rec, I wasn't like, oh, that's the underdeveloped character from The Social Network. Like that's the weakest link of The Social Network. Not that her performance isn't there. I just think that Sorkin was just like, all right, like somebody's got to sympathize with this guy. Let's just throw it in real quick because he clearly still doesn't have any real friends in the fucking movie. Um, but yeah, I think that Rashida Jones too. Like every single character, it's like, I mean, Megan Mullally was the only like recognizable person with Amy Poehler for me. I mean, Aziz too, I guess, but I feel like that's what he blew up from. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, just a lot of just like the best role players just becoming stars in their own right. Like a lot of James Hardens on Parks and Rec, guys who were just like, okay, like he's gonna be good, but he's coming off the bench for now. And it's like, wait a second, why is your best player coming off the bench? And it's like, oh wait, only so many guys can fucking get minutes, you know? I'm not even that big on basketball. I don't know why all the basketball references are coming. I've been listening to Bill Simmons talk a lot. So but I just yeah, I don't know if any show has glowed up that hard. Like, has anybody just been like, yeah, this show's decent, but now we're just gonna add like 2 of the best guys available in TV? Like, we're adding 2 of the top free agents, like, out of nowhere. It's like, Yeah, Tom Brady now has Randy Moss, and this Wes Welker guy is gonna go for 125 catches, no problem. Like, yeah, we just became the best team of all time in 10 seconds, and you have no idea what happened. Kind of feels exactly like that. Like it was such just a heat check, just like showing the clout off, like the biggest flex of all time. And just shout out to Mike Schur. I mean, I don't know if anyone has been as influential. I don't know about influential, but as important to like television in general in the past decade plus. Because I mean, The Office is The Office. I don't feel that strongly about it, but I understand how big it is for a lot of people. Like trivia nights, Halloween costumes, references everywhere. Some people, it's the only show they watch. They just loop back and through The Office over and over again, and it's like, I kind of get it. I think it's the most bingeable show of all time. Like if you put one episode on, I can watch 10 in a row, no problem. Even when I mean, until it gets bad, I would say. But I think that's the argument. Is like, when does it get bad for certain people? And some people only think it's one season. Some people only think it's a few episodes. I personally think it's the last 3 seasons, which is just brutal. The last season with Michael Scott was terrible. I think the season without him is god awful. And then like the camera crew thing in season 9, like it was interesting and a bold decision, but I still think overall, like the material there just wasn't there. It was pretty stale overall, I think. But I mean, all of that aside, I think the show was a huge hit. It was a monster, and everybody like it's memes galore and reaction shots, and like what it set up was huge because like without The Office, there is no Parks and Rec. I understand that. I don't think that they're similar. Anybody who's criticism of Parks and Rec is that it's just like The Office, I would say has clearly never watched it. Um, Way different. Like there's themes in Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec is actually like about morality and not just like fucking gags every 10 seconds. I mean, there's jokes galore and it's hilarious. I think it's funnier for that reason. It's way more realistic. I don't know. Not really the point here. I'm not trying to do the argument about it, but so The Office, huge. Everybody loves it. It's going to be a thing forever. I don't think it's aged that well either, but that doesn't seem to matter to anybody because it's too important to too many people, which is totally fine. I absolutely understand that. I don't have any beef with it. I mean, it's just too cringy for me at some points. And then boom, he does Parks and Rec again, absolute masterpiece. Into Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I was like, okay, it's a sitcom on Fox, so this can't be good. Like, that's a bad sign. I can't think of any live action shows on Fox that lasted, like other than Married with Children, which was like the first show they ever had. So yeah, it doesn't bode well for that start. So I'm like, okay, I don't really want to watch this. The trailers are cut to just show all the wacky, goofy stuff. And I'm like, well, there's Andy Samberg just being a goofball. Uh, I don't think that's going to be a show. I didn't understand anything about the cast. I didn't know what was going on. Joe Latruglio has always made me uncomfortable just because he does such a great job in Superbad of just being the creepiest, cringy motherfucker like ever. And then in Pineapple Express too, he's just a little weasel, and he's just so good at it that I was always a little like, I can't watch this guy. And out of respect, not out of a like, this guy sucks. I think that he's brilliant, but I was always like, he just is that weird. And of course, like he plays a really weird guy on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I think it fits well. Like he has a real personality, and that's clearly a real guy. He's just a little off, and they just do it lighthearted enough to where it's okay. We're supposed to like him. Like the tone is there that this is a likable guy despite him being a really fucking weird guy. Which is always nice. I think that that's like the key to any great sitcom character is like they need to be really bizarre but just so lovable because then you like can't look away. Like I mean, Andy Dwyer is a weird fucking guy. And he wasn't that likable at first because he was just the weird ex really trying to get Anne back, and she like really wasn't having it, and it was like kind of creepy. But he like lived in a fucking pit, and then eventually he just like falls for April. Like that whole arc, and they're one of the best on-screen couples of all time. Um, yeah, she just like brings out the kid in him, and they're like he's just able to like really truly be himself. And there's something about that that's admirable, but he's just like super weird. I mean, he just goes into character modes and has costumes, and like he's a very strange guy, but like his energy is unbelievable. He's essentially just like a fucking golden retriever. Like he's just a beam of light, and you just absolutely are sucked in. But that guy's fucking weird, no matter how you look at it. I think everybody in Parks and Rec is pretty fucking weird, and that's why it's so enjoyable. Because it's just everybody is actually like a fully developed character, and everybody has everything going on for it. And I think that that can be said for Brooklyn Nine-Nine as well. Like everybody is really, really developed, and like I like that it's so outrageous because it counters how well all the characters are written, and just makes the scenarios like super absurd so then they can like thrive in their own environment. But yeah, I wasn't on board at first, and the fact that it's on NBC just completes the whole Michael Schur loop of him just owning that network and putting out all the best shows for them. And they're like, dude, like, it's just super impressive because then also the Good Place, like, both the Good Place and Brooklyn Nine Nine are tonally different. They're not like the mockumentary style. They're doing their own thing. They're still very high concept, and high concept just seems to be the way to go. I think like I keep seeing trailers for new sitcoms like, every summer or whatever, or like even the winter replacement ones, and it's just like, so it's about a couple in an apartment doing stuff like that's it's not going to work like anymore, that style. I mean, like the fact that Parks and Rec is all rooted in like people working for a city government, it still has very basic sitcom episodes. Like there's all this romance drama. There's all very basic things happening, but it all falls under the umbrella of like we know who these characters are, we know what they do, we know like where they live, we know a lot about their town. Like they go into the details, and that is like the important thing that sitcoms don't understand. It's like, oh, well, here's a quirky female and her lazy boyfriend. And they're going to get into arguments, but they're going to be humorous arguments. And then we'll see their neighbor. And it's like, no. It doesn't work anymore. You can't just throw one-liners back and forth for 22 minutes and have a laugh track, and people will be like, "Oh wow, art exists and I am a fan of it." It's like, no, you have to actually fucking try. Put in some effort, okay? It's just like, and like names is a big one too. It's like I feel like in all those shows, like what are their names? It's like, oh, Jill Smith and Andy Rockefeller, not Rockefeller. Even that would be too ridiculous and still too specific for them. It would be like Andy Aronson and Jill Smith are a couple in New York City, although all we see is like random skyline things. So, like, okay, we're supposed to believe that these two people live in Manhattan, even though he's an illustrator and, she works as a receptionist somewhere. And it's like you're living in what would be like a $4,700 apartment. No problem. So, and then we never see anything resembling New York City in any capacity. I think Seinfeld, at least tonally, like did a good job of that. Where and like it had a look and it had a feel, like you felt like they were walking around New York. Maybe not necessarily the parts they were talking about when they were talking about them. Like whenever Jerry was on the sidewalk outside of his apartment, I'm like, that doesn't seem like where he would live. And I didn't know, but apparently I was right in assuming that. Like he just, I don't know, whatever. And I think that like Brooklyn Nine-Nine doesn't necessarily feel like Brooklyn. It's hard to like showcase a city in a sitcom. I understand that because you're filming them on stages in LA for the most part. It's like the only cheap way to do that. You'd have to spend so much money on a show, and I get that. So it is hard to showcase a city, but like Friends does not feel like it's in New York at all under any circumstances. Like you could have called that Chicago, you could have called it whatever. I mean, obviously certain episodes work out for being in New York, like when they drive to Atlantic City or whatever. Like yeah, proximity stuff, they kind of get that right, but at the same time it's just hard. I don't know. It's just hard to make it seem like a show is set in the city that it's set in unless you set your show in LA and then you can just show LA really easily because everybody's already there. Um, but I think that that's a cool thing about The Office and Parks and Rec. Like they're small town things, and like The Office is supposed to be about The Office, and it's like that seems like a real office. They're very clearly at an office building. I firmly am rooted in that, and it could easily be in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Because what the fuck? Nobody knows what that place is like. And Pawnee isn't a real place, but they do everything they can to world build it. They give it a whole history. And like making her the buff on it makes it believable that she would be constantly telling everybody about the history of this thing. Like it fits her personality. Nobody else really talks about the past in Pawnee. Like Ron will just remember what it was like back then because he's never moved, but he's not like a historian, and none of the other people really talk about things that used to happen there. Outside of like media people, radio people, those people like can reference some stuff, but the characters, for the most part, like all really fit their role the whole time, and I think that's huge. And then, yeah, so Brooklyn Nine-Nine probably is the least at its setting. I mean, that seems like a precinct, but every precinct seems to look like that. And I don't know. I don't go to police stations for fun. I just don't think that every single police station has all that. I don't know, like all that wood and those gates and like just that specific of a thing where like the office is like right there, and you know what I mean. The guy yells from the office and like everybody's peeking through windows. I don't know. Just seems like a little bit much for me. And then you go from there to the good place, and it's like, well, throw your fucking concepts out the window because this is just about the afterlife. Like insane. And it's a little bit harder to get into, I think, because it has a purely linear storyline. I mean, you can't really dive into that. You need to watch every episode in order, which is kind of a difficult thing for some people to dive into shows. I mean, I would never go into a show mid anywhere. You got to start from scratch no matter what, I think. I mean, I wouldn't listen to an album starting on track 6. Like if it was the single that came out first, that's one thing. But then when the whole album drops, what, you're going to play track 6 first again just so you can get, no, like you're going to start at the beginning. Um, but I think that and it's also harder to make it more of a sitcom because they have to fulfill the story the whole time. So the situations are like really specific to the concept of the show. And yeah, I mean, just to comment so much on philosophy, it shocked me that that was such a major part of the show. It obviously makes sense and fueled the plot incredibly well, and where they've gone, I think, is amazing. But it was just surprising to me, somebody who was just a fan of like Mike Schur shows, to go into this and just not really know about it, and then have it just be about so much about philosophy was really surprising to me in a very pleasant way. I would put it third, honestly. I mean, in the ranking of those 4 shows, only because Parks and Rec is one of the best shows of all time. So like and that's a high standard. More of it was funny and interesting to me. I mean, there were parts in The Good Place where I was just bored. There's some references I definitely went over my head because I'm not educated as well as I should be. And that's not to the fault of the show, but I just think that the comedy isn't as much there. There's less to be topical about. Obviously, there's less there's less opportunity for jokes, like for it to just be like a rapid fire thing because of the weight of the circumstances of everything that they're going through. So that's tough as well to say, but I would if I want to watch a comedy, I would rather watch Parks and Rec. And the same goes with Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I think that the characters are just more interesting. Yeah, that being said, I still don't really like all of the characters on The Good Place, I don't think. Like Tahani is still annoying. Just her voice, like the inflections that happen all the time. I just don't really know if I like her. I don't really know if she actually contributes anything to the show. Like her character like literally doesn't do her part, and they reference that all the time. They're like, all you're good at is throwing parties, so then she'll just throw a bunch of parties every time. It's like, well, at some point, could she be useful? Because it's really just Chidi and Eleanor. Like, they make a point to say that Jason is useless, which is fine. He can be like the token useless guy who's just there for the comic relief, and that's literally all he's been shrunk to at this point too. Like, he's almost diminished his character level, which is fine. Obviously, the stakes of the show are much more important at its current state. But I also think at the same time, like, if you're gonna diminish two characters to that limited of like powers, that it's really, I don't know, it does a disservice to like why were they even here the whole time? To now have two of four main characters just go into comic relief. Well, I guess the main humans, Ted Danson, there's five, and then Janet, there's six main characters. I understand it must be hard to keep all of their characters going and plot lines going while trying to wrap up the narrative of the entire series. Like, I'm not saying that it would be an easy fix, or like they could have done better. They probably could not have done better. I think that the show is incredibly well made, but it's hard to really, really back it and say like, the argument that this is Michael Schur's best show, I just don't think it's there. Just because the cast is, it's not as, I just don't think it's as well developed. I guess is the way to put it. Like the character development just isn't really there that much for everybody. It's kind of like Tahani and Jason have like breakthroughs. Kind of. Jason doesn't really ever, I don't think. But like, and then they're just like, all right, well, they're good now, so we'll just keep moving on. And I don't know. And then Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it's just funnier, and it's more consistent in general in comedy, but also just like within the characters. Like their characters stay on their own path, and they stay themselves the whole time. And they're they don't shy away. They keep the balance there in the sense that every character kind of gets their own story, and they stick to it for the most part. And I mean, I get that show keeps getting renewed, but when it got it got canceled out of nowhere. They didn't even get a chance to say like, "Hey, we're gonna write an ending," and it still kind of had an ending. I mean, it just worked. There was never a time when I'm like, "Oh man, I wish that they could have gone to this character more." Like they find a balance in their characters a little bit better. Um, that could be a testament to the actors. It could be a testament to the writers. I don't know. I mean, but they just stick with their characters more, and they have more characters. At least it feels like it. And if the number is also 6, then that's an exact reason why Brooklyn Nine-Nine is better, because it feels like they have more characters, whereas Good Place seems like it has 3. I mean, it's Chidi, Eleanor, and fucking Ted Danson, whatever. And then Janet, who shouldn't be a character, that was the whole thing, just ended up becoming way more prominent, I think, than they initially intended, because the whole thing was that she's not a person, but she's essentially just one of them and just has regular conversations with them. And I think it was just easier to make the magic being a character, and it helped it fuel, like, all of that a whole lot easier. Like, we can get way more done when our other friend is a voice assistant who completely controls everything in the world whenever she wants, as opposed to like, oh, well, here's a dumb guy from Jacksonville, like, who's gonna solve this problem? Is it the robot genius AI or just some dumb guy? It's like, okay, I get it. So I understand all their decisions and the way the reason everything is the way it is, but I also think that that's kind of a detriment to its ranking on here. And I put The Office last. Like I said, I just don't get it as much. It's good when it's good. It's pretty terrible when it's bad. And I think like the worst, if you put the worst episode of Parks and Rec on, whatever you decide it is, probably something from season 1, and put it up against the worst episode of The Office, which is probably something with James Spader as the boss, because that was just grueling and terrible. Like none of it was funny. It was just like black bleakness. Like it was just like awful. Like I don't know how else to put it. And I think if you watch those episodes back to back, you'd be like, "Oh wow!" Like if this is the worst of the worst, then like I would rather watch the less bad option. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to watch something that gets that terrible, because that means that there's a lot of episodes in that realm, which there are. That whole season is just brutal. And I think like the best episode of both are they're both going to showcase way different things. Like the best episode of Parks and Rec, that's a tough call, but I think that you would like whatever you would pick, it would be more than just a lot of really funny stuff. I think it would also have a lot of heart in it, and it would have a lot to say. Whereas I think the funniest episode of The Office for me is like the fire one. I think, or the Office Olympics. I like a lot. But like in those episodes, it's because this one has the most jokes and this one's the funniest. And I think that normally that's how you would rank any other type of show. Like I do not think for a second that Parks and Rec is better than Seinfeld, but like when you pick the best Seinfeld episode, you're gonna pick probably the funniest one, and maybe like that story also just happens to be super like well thought out and crazy and like kind of high concept like the other shows are. They kind of did their concepts in individual episodes, but it wouldn't be like, oh well, this is saying something profound and has like a bunch of heart or like a good message. Like obviously they intentionally didn't do that, so that show is just in a different category. So I'm not saying that like, oh, this has to have heart and a message to be a better thing. I just think that The Office very much wanted that. Like they wanted to be like, oh well, we have a sensitive side and like everybody's gonna get emotional at these certain points. Like even outside of Jim and Pam, like Michael would have those moments where he would go too far, and then he would like just cry like a little child, basically in his apology, and everybody would be like, "Oh no, you're a great boss." It's like, no, he's not. We all know that he's not. I think that the thing is funny that he's like secretly a savant and can just like make amazing things happen in desperate situations. I love that, but yeah, I don't think that the consistency, or not the consistency. I don't think that the heart was ever there as much, and I think that they wanted it to be. But again, I'm not trying to bash on The Office. Just in that ranking, Parks and Rec absolutely the winner. And but Michael Schur, congratulations on having like the best run for a TV guy, like possibly of all time. I mean, I know like Norman Lear or whoever did a bunch. I don't know old time producers, so there could be a bunch of guys who had like 15 hit shows, and I would know about that. But I would say that Mike Schur definitely wins the decade in for sure network television, possibly just television period, just because like the sheer ability to just have that much content and that much power like over an entire generation of people, possibly two, possibly more, um, is just unprecedented. I think that anybody could like any of those shows, like any age group, it doesn't matter. And you know what I mean? Like there's something for everybody in all of those shows. There's representations of people. There's like totally different styles. Like I mean, everybody has a job. And I don't know. I just think that it's brilliant that like all four of those shows, there can be fans of just one, all four, or any combination of them, and that's something that you should really strive for, like as a network. And they got it all with one guy. Um, So yeah, I just think he's brilliant. Excited for what his next move is going to be now that. Well, I guess he still has Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I mean, he was balancing two shows like the whole time, nonstop. And is he gonna do another? Like, is he gonna be like, okay, here's another showstopper? Like, here's the next best network television show? We'll see. I hope so. I'm excited at the prospects of what people are gonna create. I especially after like award season and seeing all the snubs, and it's like, all right, well, who's next? Like, what's the next move for Adam Sandler and the Safdie brothers? Because never had seen a Safdie brothers movie before, but Jesus Christ, they're amazing. If that movie Good Time with Robert Pattinson is anything close, which I've heard that it's better, we'll see. I don't know. Really like Gems. Um, they're like 33, so they're going to be making movies for like 40 more years for sure. And really excited to see how they top that. But the fact that it gets no nominations at all. Look, if you don't want to do Sandler for Best Actor, whether that's out of some kind of precedent because like you don't think that he deserves one, whatever the Academy's reasoning was for not nominating Sandler, I completely disagree with it. But anytime I disagree with a nomination, it's usually because I haven't seen most of the movies that are being nominated, so I can't really like definitively say like, oh, this is bullshit, this guy should have got it, but it's usually like I've seen a performance that was so good and it's like this guy definitely should have got it. And this is one of those things. It's like there's no way he shouldn't have gotten one because it was that great. Like it doesn't necessarily say that like the other people aren't deserving. It's just like this guy just also 100% was. And I mean Joaquin Phoenix definitely deserves it. I don't care. Like that movie was not that great. I get it. Uh the editing was terrible. The fact that it's nominated for best editing drove me up the wall because you could have cut 20 minutes off that movie. Definitely 10 for sure, and like moved the hospital scene at the end into a mid credits just so it's like a little bonus for everybody, and make the ending when he's on the car. Like that's way better. And we didn't need the flashback to show me that he was just imagining it. Like, I understood he was just imagining it by her reaction. Like, you don't need to fucking spoon feed it down my throat like that. So I just think that movie, like, wanted to be a masterpiece, and I think, like, it was, like, a little bit of fine tuning away from it. So I'm not, like, super against it. I'm just, like, slightly disappointed for completely different reasons than everybody else. Um, but yeah, Joaquin Phoenix was absolutely phenomenal. I think that he's like probably the best actor maybe ever. I know that that's bold, but I mean like his versatility is insane. His choices are insane. Like the movies he makes are absolutely nuts. I think that I'm Still Here, while not necessarily a great movie, the context around it of him doing that performance art and just like destroying his own career just for the sake of doing it is absolutely unbelievable. And I think that had they slipped that narrative into the movie, I haven't seen it in a while, so they may mention it like at the end or like in like a quick like text on screen thing. But they also may not mention it at all. But either way, like if it was like if they built a narrative around it and like I don't know, I don't want to say like did like interview shots of him talking about it because that would be kind of tacky. And I don't know, but I think if they formed more of a narrative around what was happening and like we're straight up like in the movie, like this is performance art and we fooled everybody. I don't know. I think that would have boosted it quite a bit, and it probably wouldn't have. I think it took him like 2 years to recover from that. But and then just everything he's done that I've seen, I think is absolutely amazing. I don't really care for Inherent Vice. I'm a big PTA guy. Seen everything but Phantom Thread and that Tom York thing. It's not out of even laziness. With Paul Thomas Anderson, it's like I gotta be in a mode. I gotta be ready because I need to actually watch this movie. I need to focus. I need to pay attention because he's going to do something beautiful. I need to listen to the score because Johnny Greenwood's going to tear it apart, you know. So that's really why I'm still behind on him. But I would say Inherent Vice is probably his worst movie. But that's okay. You're going to have a worst movie. And for that to be somebody's worst movie is not nearly a bad thing. A lot of people's worst movie is pretty terrible. So I think that, but yeah, I think Sandler deserved it. I don't know. I think that movie deserves something. Like, best original score also, like, are you out of your mind? Those synths are insane. One O Tricks Point Never. Whatever his real name is that he goes by for the score, Daniel something. I don't want to get it wrong. The score is unbelievable. The editing in that movie is unbelievable because the pacing is nonstop. It's frenetic the whole time. The cinematography is insane. Like, for that movie to not have like a nomination in basically every category, I think is insane. I think Kevin Garnett. Supporting is always tough because supporting is like there's a lot of great supporting roles usually, way more than lead, so it doesn't jump out as much. But I think KG crushed it. He was amazing in that. And I think that there's too many noms for Joker, especially editing. Again, I cannot stress that enough how terrible that is. Or I think The Irishman might have a best editing thing. I don't know. The Irishman has too many nominations as well. If you're gonna do all that money for the CGI in their face, that's all I'm saying is like, why not just CGI their face onto a body double for when they have to do anything physical? Because when he runs, it's like that is an old fucking man. That guy's not 45, and he doesn't even look that young. And you can never really tell what age they are because they never really tell you. And I get that that's like the point. It's that like life just goes by, and then like you realize you fucked up. It's like, okay, that's a great statement, but when he's young, he could still like not look like he's like 75, especially when you're putting all the money in on the tech. It's like if you're going to make it ridiculous and just do everything with makeup then. Because if you're going to take all those steps to like de-age their face, but then it's just like, oh, well, this guy just got curb stomped by a 78-year-old man. You know, he couldn't even throw the gun. It like unless what were they using? Like a 50-pound prop gun? How heavy could that thing have been? Was that a real pistol made out of like solid steel that weighed like 10 pounds? And De Niro's wrist is too frail. You know, like I just don't understand that part of it. I think the movie's too long, and I'm not one of those people. It's not like a generational thing where like, oh, I don't have the attention span to watch a long movie. No. Because I was captivated. I just watched Magnolia for the first time. Like I said, I take my time with Paul Thomas Anderson. I just watched it recently for the first time, and I was pretty captivated the entire time. There were certain moments where I was like, all right, can we jump to the other storyline? I didn't like watching the girl do coke that much. Like, I get it, she's doing a lot of coke, but it was like they were almost setting it up to where she was gonna OD like before the date, and then she doesn't, and then they make it seem like it's, I don't know. It might just be because I've seen Pulp Fiction so many times, but I was basically expecting it to be Pulp Fiction where she just ODs. I guess that's. I just realized that right now. So sorry, PTA. I don't think you're ripping off Tarantino ever. But yeah, I mean, there were moments in that movie where I was like, all right, we can jump to the other characters. Like, okay, the kid peed his pants, and like nobody is on his side about this. Like that it was just uncomfortable. I mean, I'm sure that's the point. You know, that being a kid star is rough. And you just kind of want to be a kid. But yeah, I mean, the fact that nobody was on his side, I was like, I don't even want to watch this. They're just berating this child. This isn't entertaining, you know. But that's nitpicks. That was a great movie, absolute masterpiece. Yeah, not a masterpiece, but great movie. Absolutely loved it. But I think that The Irishman, it didn't need to be 3.5 or whatever it is. I couldn't tell you like what you could cut. I think that those scenes where they're like in the car and the women want to keep pulling over to smoke, I loved that. I think you could have did like a whole. They could have done like the whole first hour of the movie as a road movie, and it would have been awesome. And then they jump cut and just do like 20 year they check in or something. I don't know, almost like the way Steve Jobs was done, something like that. But I couldn't tell you what scenes you should cut. I mean, it just all needed to not be as long. I think that how many times are you gonna tell him that he needs to keep Hoffa in check? Like, you told him a bunch of times. Like, I think clearly over the course of like multiple years that like Hoffa needs to chill. And it's like, yeah, you made that clear. You're gonna keep showing these scenes, and then the scene where they lure Hoffa to the house. How many times are you gonna do that? Like, how do you? Why was that? It was so clunky and weird, and just the like you knew what was happening, and it made it seem like he knew what was happening, but then like you realize he had no idea what was going on, and it was just really bizarre and really it just over explained. I don't know. I think that it was good, but I mean the hype was too much. I mean, hype kills things. I understand that that's a big factor, but there's no, I don't know. It didn't need to be that long. That's all I really have to say. I think it could have got cut down. So the fact that that has so many nominations is it's a lot of legacy stuff. Where people said Scorsese's Departed thing was a legacy thing. It's like, have you seen The Departed? That's an amazing movie. Now, in comparison to like Raging Bull or Goodfellas, it's like, yeah, sure, he should have got those. So yeah, like The Departed is partially a legacy thing because, well, they're not necessarily saying like, oh, The Departed is his best movie. It's like, no, this time, this year, it was the best one in the votes. Now, I don't agree with the votes. I think they fuck up all the time. And, like, he obviously should have won for those other movies. But what I'm saying is, like, it doesn't, it's not necessarily a legacy thing. Because that movie's fucking amazing. I think him winning for The Irishman and any or all of those guys, whoever ends up winning, which they might, that would be more of a legacy thing, even if they already have the award. It's kind of like a victory lap type thing. And I think that that's kind of bullshit because it just doesn't deserve it. I have no problem with movie lengths if they're long, if it's justified. I'm a big Titanic guy. Fucking love Titanic. I can watch that right now, beginning to end. It probably runs a little long as well, but not nearly as egregiously. There's never moments where I'm like, Jesus, let's go already. Whereas, like, in The Irishman, it's like, yeah, let's pick it up. Like, I get it. It's about how life is long, and, like, you make these decisions along the way, and then in the end, who's there for you? That's good, but that's how I feel watching the movie, though, too. It's like, Jesus, like, I just spent all day doing this, and it's like, I look around, and it's like, well, the fucking sun went down. I just wasted a day. It doesn't feel like, holy shit, I just saw such a moving piece of art. I may need to rewatch it. I fully understand that I may need to rewatch it, but I'm just saying that that's how I feel about it right now at this point in time. And I think that it just could have been cut down. And I don't know. I need to see that 1917 movie. I want to see it in like IMAX. The whole one shot thing as a gimmick for a war movie, it sounds both like it makes sense and that they're missing something. I think because the title is 1917, it should be a little bit more of like a, I don't know, like more of a true period piece. I don't know. It makes it sound like it's about the whole year 1917, but from what I gather, it's about like two dudes like on a mission, and I just find the title to be a little bit inappropriate. I don't know. That's just a personal thing. It's kind of like the way I think that if Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice was just called Dawn of Justice or like called whatever, but not called Batman versus Superman, I think that movie goes up like 10 percentage points in my head because they don't fight. It's not about that. They make it seem like the whole movie's going to be one big epic battle between these two guys, and like, yeah, they fight, but not for that long, and then they're mostly on the same page. And I just think that if you call that movie Dawn of Justice and like basically frame the title as to say that it's about the origin of the Justice League, then the movie makes a whole lot more sense because the movie's about the fucking origin of the Justice League. So I just think titles go a long way. So I think calling it 1917, just on like knowing about what the concept of the movie's about, I think was a little too much, but that's okay. And I really want to see that movie. And then the Oscars, you say what you want about them. Everybody cares, but everybody wants to talk about it like they don't. It's like you care, and they matter. as much as I would love for con awards to like mean everything to everybody, they just don't. It's international, I get it. And everybody's going to be paying attention to the Oscars and it's going to mean more. It just is, even though it shouldn't. And like people know truly that like winning the Golden Palm is like the most prestigious award, but like you're still gonna want that Oscar win, and that's gonna be the thing that people talk about, at least in America. Okay, so like I get it that they fuck up all the time, and that's pretty much the biggest reason why we shouldn't care. It's like if they're never getting these awards right in our minds, then why do we trust them and call them prestigious? It's like, well, if the wrong person always wins, then what's the fucking point? Because it's a decision made by people. It's not like in sports where like I don't know, like a team could fuck up and another team could execute. Like in football, let's say, like on one Sunday, it's like the perfect game plan versus like the worst game plan possible. Like you game plan your offense exactly how they expect, and so their defense is waiting on every move you have, and then vice versa for your offense against their defense. And it's like, I mean, a team can just win. And now I'm not saying that this is a bad team by any means, but like the Titans are a perfect example. It's like everybody's underestimating them, and everybody's been saying that they've been the best team in the AFC, like or one of the best teams in the AFC. Obviously, the Ravens were on a roll, but like everybody was calling them like one of the three best teams in the AFC for the whole last like 8 games of the season. And then all of a sudden, what? Because they're playing the Patriots, they shouldn't be favored. It's like that doesn't make any sense because everybody's talking about how the Patriots aren't that good. And I understand that they get all the legacy picks, and it's like they're held to a higher standard and they've earned that higher standard. But it's like when you're admitting that this team isn't that good, even though they're 12-4. That was always my thing. It's like they're 12-4. You're talking about how terrible they are. It doesn't really make any sense. But like when you watch them, like yeah, clearly they don't have that same juice this year. They just don't. And the Titans, you were just talking about being on such a hot streak. Like every single person I've heard talk about them on ESPN, on whatever, all of a sudden because now it's the playoffs, it's like they're not one of the hottest teams. Like we always talk about how hot streaks make a difference, and like you got to be getting hot at the right time, going into the playoffs and making the right moves. And it's like that's exactly what they were doing. Like they have all the momentum in the world, and now they beat. They beat the best team of the entire century. They beat a team that has been great for this entire century, basically, and they beat after that the team that has been the best team this year by far. And they did it pretty easily. The second one, especially. I mean, it did not really feel like I in my head I was like, oh man, I'm waiting for the Ravens to just strike. They just didn't. And so like in retrospect, it's like they never had a chance. It was truly brutal. And but yeah, so it's like a thing like that where there's no it's nobody's fault but that team's. You can't be like so if the Titans somehow win the Super Bowl, I think whoever wins the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl this year. Um I picked the Titans the last 2 weeks. I was the only person I know that picked them over the Ravens. Um I don't know if I can pick them over the Chiefs though. I want to. I really want them to win the Super Bowl. I think that would be awesome, but I don't know if they could beat the Chiefs after what the Chiefs just did. I mean, to just score like that, it's like it was remarkable to watch, frankly. And it's like the Titans could go a whole game without throwing it, and the Chiefs can go a whole game without running it, and it would just be the weirdest duel of all time. And yeah, I don't know if I can pick them this time. My picks were not right for the NFC at all. I did not have this. I had Chiefs, Titans in the championship game. I don't even know what I had in the NFC. I had Saints probably, and then I think I had Saints 49ers. No, I don't. I didn't. I thought the Vikings were going to beat the 49ers. But I don't know who I initially had. I think I had the wrong picks. So, but either way, I just think that the AFC team is going to win out because let's say the Packers make it, I don't think they have a chance against either team. Like, what's Darius Smith's pass rush going to do when Derrick Henry's running it 46 times in the Super Bowl? And I think that um, what I mean, the 49ers, they just don't have the experience. Like, we always talk about how, like, teams need experience, and you have to make the playoffs first, and you have to get there. Like, you have to earn your stripes. And it's like, all of a sudden, we're just calling this team the best team in the NFL, and I don't know if that's right. Because look at what just happened to the Ravens. And they made the playoffs last year and got to do it together. I get it. The whole offense was transformed. It's a completely different team. But at least, like, they'd been there. Like, Lamar had been there and started in a playoff game already. And, like, Jimmy G, you're just saying he's just going to go down and win the Super Bowl? I'm sorry. I don't think that that's that easy. And I just think that the Chiefs and Titans are better than both the 49ers. The Titans are right now, the Chiefs are period. But they're both better than both teams. And we'll see, obviously. That's why they play the game, and that's what I'm saying though. Like, if the Titans win the Super Bowl, there's going to be a lot of what ifs. I mean, sure, there's what ifs for the Patriots game. I mean, the Patriots had every opportunity to beat them way more so than the Ravens did. But then you're going to say, what if the Ravens, blah, blah, blah? What if the Texans played their starters and knocked them out of the playoffs, which I think that teams should do if you're in the same division? I think that's just how a divisional rivalry should work. Like, if you're playing a team in your division the last week of the year, you're in the playoffs, the only way they can make it is if they beat you. It's like you pretty much have to go out there and play them just to say, like, hey, fuck you. This is our division. We're making it. You're not. I think that you have to make that statement. I think the fact that you're resting your starters is like, yeah, we don't care. It's like, no. Because if you end up having to play a division rival in a playoff game, it's a toss-up. Because they know you. They know you better than anybody. You should want them in there. But yeah, so there's always going to be a lot of what ifs, but it's never like it's the what ifs are like split second decision moves. Like, what if Pete Carroll didn't throw that pass? We don't know. We don't know. But like with the Oscars, looping it all back here, you can always look back and just be like, well, why the fuck did he win that award? Who let that happen? You know what I mean? Whereas, like, in football specifically, like, there are so many decisions being made, like, by every single individual player on every single individual play that, like, anything could swing anything at any moment, and, like, coaches could do anything wrong at any moment, and it could, like, set off a butterfly effect whole thing. Like, it's just so unpredictable and so incredible that, like, yeah, you could kind of be like, man, they really blew that, but it's like, they had no idea, you know what I mean? Like, it's just way more of a toss-up. It's way harder to say. There are way many more factors involved. Whereas, like, you're going to tell me Adam Sandler didn't crush it? Like, just try and tell me Adam Sandler didn't crush it, and you're full of fucking shit. I'm sorry, but that's my beef with it. It's like, especially that movie shows it exactly. Like, they wrote that movie around that basketball game. That basketball game is never going to change, and there's nothing that anybody can do about the outcome that could have made it any different. Or like that series, like the Celtics did what they did, and you know what I mean. Like they couldn't change it, and they chose not to. I mean, but like literally, like they used the in-game footage. They could not have changed the stats of that game. They could not have made anything happen differently. So like they understood the significance of like all of the decisions that happened in that bet because they happened so specific and they're so ridiculous, and this game just happens to make it. Like, I don't know, it's just brilliantly written. But I think that in the same way in Oscar's decision, it's like, well, everybody was just on, like, they just got lobbied into it, or like they got suckered into this decision, and it's like, you guys get to pick who the best is. Why are you not basing it just on like the cold hard facts? I don't like how there's like politicking for your awards and like you have to schmooze people. It's a broken and flawed system, and it should be as sacred as sports, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, those outcomes are final once they happen, and like no matter what, those are the two things that are similar. Like, if a referee makes a bad call, and you can't undo it. Like, once the time runs out, the time has run out. And that's it. We can't go back. And, like, the Roby Coleman pass interference thing, like, yeah, that's a fucking crime. But there's something sacred in the fact that, like, okay, we're not going to change this. So I respect that with, like, the Oscars, where they're not like, okay, we need to, like, strip this guy and then, like, give it to this lady. And we need to, like, oh, man, there was a scandal over here. Like, I respect that they, like, expect the finality of it and just kind of leave things as they are. But I think retrospectively, like, we can look back and be like, oh, this performance wasn't that good. Like, they didn't deserve it. This person should have got it. And, like, anybody on the committee can admit that. Whereas, like, yeah, I can think about it all the time and fantasize about '07 Patriots going undefeated, like making that last drive, which they totally should have made. They had 3 timeouts. I don't understand any of the decision making that happened there. But, like, that's my thing. It's like, uh, no matter how much I think about it, like, that game ended. It was 17-14. That's it. We can't go back. Like, there isn't the what if of, like, what if they did, like, these 26 different things differently. It's like, yeah, sure. Whereas, like, a performance can, like, not age that well, and you can look at it and be like, this wasn't even that good of a movie. Like, why did anybody like this? You can, like, movies can age poorly, and you can just be like, what the hell? And, like, a team can age poorly in the sense of, like, Jesus, they really screwed that up, and it's like, wow, they're gonna go down in history as, like, one of the, like, they made some of the biggest mistakes of all time. But you're never, like, there's no way to talk about, like, what if these things changed, because the decisions were there were too many to there's too many what ifs in any given situation. Whereas, like, this year it could just be like, what if Adam Sandler just got nominated? What would that have done? And, like, they easily could have given him the nomination. Like, he has no say in that. He put the killer performance on, though. Whereas I keep referencing Patriot stuff because I just want to clarify. Although I'm from Chicago, big Bears guy, absolutely my favorite team. Unfortunately, it's a tortured situation. They're bringing back fucking Trubisky again. I cannot believe that. Like, we better at least sign somebody as a backup. Give me Mariota, even. You know, I'll take anybody. Red Rifle, come through. At least you can fucking throw a ball. Uh, but the first Super Bowl I remember watching, I remember seeing the Titans Rams, and, like, seeing that last play. I remember very specifically, like, holy shit, they just lost the Super Bowl by a yard? Like, that is insane. And I was like, okay, I get football. And then, so the next year was kind of the first year. No, I still don't remember that much. But I remember them beating the Rams, and I just remember them saying how unprecedented it was, and just being like, okay, I like these guys. Then obviously I just kept seeing them in the Super Bowl. Like, they played the Panthers and then the Eagles, and I remember the Eagles one was a big deal because, like, everybody's like, T.O. is gonna play, he shouldn't be playing, and then he just went out and, like, tore them apart, and, like, I just remember basically feeling like they lost in spite of T.O. Now, I would have to rewatch that game because I was a very small child, but anyway, like, it was just like Brady was the guy when I was a kid. Like, he was the first guy I watched win and do magic, and it's the same reason why people love Elway versus Montana or Marino. Like, it was about, like, who was the guy you saw first that wowed you the most. And, like, for me, like, if you look at Brady's stats in the Super Bowl, like, all three of those, I think he didn't do that great, but, like, they won the game, and I just remember feeling like, wow, this guy is a hero. Um, and then, like, as I, like, really got into football, like, by the time I was like 10 or 11, they were crushing it every year, and he was better by then. Like, they were a better team. Like, I was 12 when the '07 Patriots happened. So I was immediately locked in because they were always right there, and I never liked Peyton Manning, and it was always Brady versus Manning. Like, that was the argument. And I never liked Peyton Manning. He just would not stop barking all the time. It's like, how about you execute a play that was called? Why don't you just, like, you know what I mean? If you're going to go out of every play, it's like ridiculous that there's almost no challenge to it. Like, I feel like anybody that can read a defense could go up and change, like, every single thing about a play every single time, and it's like, oh, well, now we beat the defense. It's like, well, now what if they just audible back? It's like exhausting. It was just exhausting to watch him. I didn't like how good he was either. Like, he was just unbelievable to watch, frankly. And it made me angry because he was so good. And it's like, whenever you're not rooting for the guy that's just so good, it's just annoying to watch. And then especially when they beat the Bears in the Super Bowl, that cemented it as like, fuck Peyton Manning. And you know what? That might have been where the absolute Brady love like officially kicked in, was the '06 Super Bowl, because I couldn't even grasp, like, I knew that they had made it since '85, but I couldn't grasp that amount of time. And considering how good like the '85 Bears were, like, I couldn't grasp it. And anyway, the whole thing, Brady is the man. Love Brady. So a lot of Patriots references are going to be coming. And also, just like, they're the best analogy to make, because nobody has been that excellent over that much amount of time. It is absolutely unprecedented. So, yeah, we love the Patriots here at Requiem for a Tuesday. Um, anyway, I think I'm going to wrap things up, but I just wanted to say I really hope that I get to do this pretty consistently. Um, it's fun to get the thoughts out there. Hopefully, again, it'll be a little more streamlined as we get better, a little less ums, hopefully, less weird pauses. I'm going to work at it. Hopefully, again, get some structure to it. I would like to. This was kind of fun, though. So we'll see. Hopefully, have like some guests, some stuff like that, different topics. I definitely plan on going through like rankings. Um, that's always been a really fun thing for me. I don't know why. I think it's because I have an affinity like for being good at math. Like, for whatever reason, just like ranking things and like looking at statistics, like stuff like that. It always just comforts. Like, I just have a comfort in numbers, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Wasn't trying to do the humble brag about my math skills, because I haven't done a fucking math problem in, Jesus, like 7 years now. God, that's terrifying just to say. Um, but yeah, so I definitely plan on doing some special ranking episodes, whether it's like ranking Tarantino movies or like Radiohead albums, something crazy like that. Yeah, I know it's real wild. Uh, but so yeah, I've got some plans. Hopefully, execute them as soon as possible. Plan is to kind of drop this weekly, usually on Tuesdays, even though it might make more sense for them to air on Wednesdays. I'd like to be that on the nose with it. And yeah, I mean, I've got a bunch of merch ideas already. So let's. I mean, I know that it's way too soon to talk about stuff like that, but let's just hope that this can keep growing. I hope to keep doing it. And thanks for listening. Just remember, I are fat, you are fat, we are fat. Calculator.